Oh, 2 minutes?
No, you got 2 minutes.
Huh?
You've got 2 minutes, yeah.
That's what I thought. Mary just didn't hurt.
Yeah, Mary's always ready.
She wants to go home.
She hasn't done it in a while. She's a little nervous back there.
Oh, okay.
Hey, Al. Curious, personal. How did you get away with it not being called Bill?
How did I do?
Get away as a kid with not being called Bill?
Because my name was Alan.
Okay.
My middle name
Is Alan.
is Alan, and I went by Al instead of.
Okay.
Instead of your
I
first
didn't know
name.
if family decided.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I was told.
And you believe everything you hear, don't you?
We didn't
My
know you were
family
that
knows
age.
I wouldn't be.
You know, it's funny, as about 7, I had a dog, 6, 7, something like that. The dog didn't show up one day. And my parents had told me, well, you know, the neighbors which were behind us, and they had just moved, liked the dog, which they did, and Billy, they took him with them. I didn't find out until 2 years ago from my brother that the dog had gotten hit and he had to kill the damn thing. No,
All right, Abe, is it official? Okay. Good evening. Let's call the meeting to order, please. Today is Tuesday, it's January 9th. We're at the Civic Center for our regular meeting. We'll stand for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. McLaughlin.
Here.
Miss Albrecht.
Here.
Mayor Kathy.
Here.
Mr. Wallace.
Here.
Mr. Putnell.
Here.
Thank you. I don't have anything at this time. Mr. McLaughlin?
You.
No.
No.
Citizens' comments. I think everyone understands or knows how that works. Have any citizens' comments? Okay. Under the consent agenda, we have the minutes from the, excuse me, from the last meeting. Do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda?
So moved.
Have a motion second. Any corrections or additions? Any opposition to the motion? Carries 5-0. Jeff? You're up.
Good evening, Jeff Britton, Dewberry Preble Rish. Not too much to talk about on the project front right now. I'll start with the second item on the updates, DOT TAP grant. We began conversations with folks at DOT to kind of try to pre-sell the application. This phase of the application for the TAP grant is the sidewalk on 15th Street between the existing section that the city put in years ago, spanning the creek and tying into the existing section that's in front of the subdivisions on the north side of 15th Street. So this phase is only a few hundred feet, but it would include a pedestrian bridge outside of the roadway area across the creek. Speaking with some folks, they thought it was a better approach instead of trying to go for the whole thing, break it down into smaller segments. This seems to be the most critical part of the sidewalk right here, and so that's where we're going to focus. And also, typically once you're funded, following segments will be easier to get awarded as well. So hopefully by starting small, that'll allow us to make more progress sooner. Canal Park Pavilion, still no word from DOT. I tried them again at the end of last week. Not DOT, excuse me, DEP. We believe they have everything they need to be able to approve it. We expect that any day now. Existing projects, the alternate water source. We're talking about doing another larger test well at a shallower elevation just to be able to see what kind of water quality and volume we're going to be able to pull from that elevation. The current test well is a 4-inch well with capacity to draw a pretty good amount of water from about 860 feet below the surface. The water down there is better in some regards to fluoride, but it has some other issues as far as iron and other solids that if we're pulling from a deep well and a shallower well, we'll be able to blend the two to get a better water quality. So, in progress on that one, the surveyors are out there. We'll be out there this week, actually surveying the area where we have the test well and the corridor where we plan on tying into the existing infrastructure in 15th Street. May have also seen some of our survey trucks over in the New Mexico Street area, Colorado Street area. We're looking at doing some stormwater improvements there. So right now we're just quantifying what are the elevations, where are the right-of-way lines, property lines, things of that nature, so we can figure out exactly how we're going to take it and design to improve stormwater runoff in that area. Let's see, the paving projects, 33rd Street extension has been submitted to DEP for the CCCL permit. 23rd Street and Canal Parkway extension should go in. We expected them to go in by now, but we ran into a little bit of issue with cut and fill, and typically DEP wants you to have a net zero cut fill inside the CCCL. They don't want you hauling off any cut, and they don't want you importing any fill. So we're trying to balance those sites, but at the same time trying to manage stormwater there so we don't create a ponding issue like we have at some of the other streets that just terminate into the dune system. So that's what we're trying to balance there. Back to the top item on the list, the DEP grant for the sand bypass beach restoration. Mel received an executed copy from DEP this week. Is that right, Mel? This week?
Happened today.
Okay, excellent. And as such, what I dropped off in front of you is a copy of the proposal that we talked about last spring when we first were trying to quantify how much the grant we're going to be able to use. And we talked about it again in the summer after revising the agreement with DEP a little bit. This is something that we'll need a decision on by the next meeting that we have. And there's the components that are in here. It's surveying what's out there, it's design, it's permitting, and construction administration, which includes observations and certifications. It doesn't include the construction itself. That'll be a separate contract with the contractor. One of the components in here that was talked about for that grant was construction of some jetties on the east side of the mouth of the canal. Some folks weren't so keen on that. Some folks thought it was a pretty good idea. Our engineer thinks it's a pretty good idea because the jetties that are there right now are not sand tight. They allow sand to filter back through it into the canal. So as we're dredging and stockpiling, it can actually work its way back through the jetties back into the canal. Our engineer also thinks that it'll cut down on drift that comes around the jetties and kind of into that little eddy and settling in that area. So there's definitely pros to doing it, but it's something that if the city doesn't want it, we're certainly not going to try to force it down your throat. So that's something to think about. And if need be, I can meet with any of you guys individually. I can set up a call with our coastal engineer if y'all want to hear it from the horse's mouth, so to speak, directly, get the pros and cons of it. If it's something that's not wanted, we can certainly go back and revise this proposal this week, get it back into the city, and have you guys vote on it at the next meeting. So with that, I'll take any questions anyone might have.
Yeah, not being here in the spring, and having just seen this, the only question I have from prior discussions, the funding or the receipt of the, or being approved, I guess is the right way to say that, in the submittal, does it have funding in the submittal?
Yes.
I mean, does it have engineering fees in the submittal?
That goes into the calculation of the grant. And again, the grant has a 25% match, so it's a $465,000 grant. The overall value is around $624,000, I think, when you take into account the city's responsibility. Now, obviously, if you don't use all of that 465, you don't owe the
We're about
$124,000.
$160,000 short, just quick math, of a required match.
Excuse me?
We're about $160,000.
125, a third of 465. So
Okay, and that's a budgeted number? If I remember
it
right.
should be, because this was something that's been on the radar for a while. I believe it is.
Is that a budgeted number?
There was CDC. The CDC had pledged to pay for half of that as long as we pay for the other half, and our half is in the budget.
Okay.
And something I want to point out real quick, the figures are in here for the cost for each task.
Yeah.
And when this was brought up before, somebody was complaining about how much work the charge is for this work. And so I kind of wanted to point out that if you go through each of these tasks, the actual design of the improvements is only around $32,000. Permitting is $48,000. And
Wait,
construction phase services,
you said 48,000?
$48,000. Construction phase services, which includes mandatory observation.
Who do we pay the permit to?
Excuse me?
Who do we pay the
That,
permit
but
to?
that's not the permit application fee. That's the effort to procure the permits so the work can be done. So these are regulatory requirements that are driving this cost. It's not.
So the Republicans aren't cutting this out any yet, huh?
Unless the Donald can pull some strings real quick. Yeah.
Well, Jeff, is this?
Yes, sir.
This is where we're gonna truck sand down to the.
The critically eroded areas in the
Critically
beach.
eroded areas.
Yes, sir.
And we're gonna do it on certain times of the year.
Correct. It'll have to take place after November and prior to May, I believe it is.
And it'll happen about every 3 or 4 years.
Correct.
And they're gonna let us stockpile the sand that we dredge.
Correct.
Like we used to have a mountain of sand down there. They're gonna let us do that again.
Correct.
And then we're gonna truck it, go up on the highway or go down the beach.
Go down the beach.
All right, I'm sure I'll have more questions, but I'm
Sure.
I'm trying to refresh my memory of, in the amount of the grant. Cycle, we go through this exercise again?
Correct.
How long will this take? I mean, from the time we start hauling,
We should be able to do it in 3 months, 2 to 3 months.
you mean every day for 2 or 3 months?
Well, probably not Saturday, Sunday as well, but
So we're gonna be run over. What about the beach goers during this time? Or
it's like any other. 5 years. So each time we won't need to get a new permit. I'm sorry if I misspoke on that before.
Okay. Is this a 5-year project?
2 to 3 years, depending on when the cycles fall, permits being received, being able to get started and actually do the work. There wouldn't be a sense of starting the work in April and then stopping for 7 months and then picking back up in November.
So this grant's gonna cover more than 90 days of sand moving?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's what I was trying, so it's gonna cover more than one cycle of sand, but it's gonna cover several. The money,
It might cover 2. It might cover 2 hauls. But it'll cover the permit. The permit will last
right.
for years.
Permit's no good without the money. Okay, I'm just trying to get a feel for how much we're gonna be able to do for what we are
Yes, sir.
spending.
Yes, sir.
2 hauls, maybe,
Correct.
and this is based off of cubic yards of sand.
That is correct. And I'll be around if once you get into it, start reading it, have any questions, email me, call me. I'll be happy to come down and speak with everybody. So, I guess one last thing. Y'all probably remember Dina Bautista, one of our engineers. She's going to be spending more time down here as well, trying to help out to give the city more attention that it needs. So don't be surprised if you see her around.
Okay. Any questions for Dewberry? Anybody else? Jeff, thank you, appreciate it. All right, we're gonna go to department reports. Chief Kelly?
Yes, sir. Happy New Year to everybody. The month of December of 2017, the Mexico Beach Police Department responded and received 397 calls for service. That's exactly 120 calls for service from this time last year. During the course of the month, we completed 3,945 building and security checks. We conducted 38 traffic stops in the past 31 days. Of the 38 traffic stops, 28 warning citations were issued and only 1 full state citation. We had 11 arrests. In the breakdown of the 11 arrests, we had 1 subject that was a felon in possession of firearms that was stopped on a traffic stop. The weapons were seized and the subject went to jail. We had 3 drug arrests from traffic stops. We had an individual turn in for a warrant, an intoxicated person, and 5 related traffic arrests from traffic stops. 10 suspicious person calls, 2 felony arrests from wanted felons, 22 follow-up reports from burglaries and thefts, 10 suspicious vehicle calls, 7 reckless drivings, and 4 theft reports. We also had 2 burglaries in the city. We've had calls for service requesting that the police department do unlocks of locked vehicles. The city policy, we do not unlock cars unless it's an emergency. And now if the council wishes to come up with a policy, or they wish for me to write a policy changing that, but there are companies around the area that will come in. However, if there's a child locked in the car, medication locked in the car, an animal locked in the car, and the weather's not permitting, then we will do whatever we can to get into it in a manner of safety for the vehicle as well as the property owner. But other than that, that's all that we've had. We had a call at the Space Place where we've had several thefts. We did recover one of the boats. A trailer was recovered that was also removed. The subject is arrested. He's in Gulf County Jail right now, and I'm pending a warrant for additional charges on the same subject. But I haven't got an answer to all the thefts that we've had the last couple of months. Majority of it is items being left unattended or not secured. But the larger items, 1 or 2 at a time, we are getting back, and subjects being held accountable for. And that's what I have for the report.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Questions for the chief, David? Anyone?
Yeah, how much trouble would it be to strictly enforce the speed limit and have signs up that says so? I mean, I have a little time I spend at the coffee shop and I watch, I mean, some people fly through here and it's...
I'll be more than glad to take our single one officer that patrols the entire city and redesignate majority of his day to traffic on Highway 98. But
Well, how about just parking an empty car on Highway 98?
we can do that too, and I had a citizen complain one day when they walked up to talk to the officer in the car and nobody came to the car.
Well, they'll get over it.
So, and I even thought about putting a mannequin in the car just to make it look like an officer, but I foresee a complaint coming from that.
Well, I suggested this once before and you did it, and the very 3 or 4 days later, I'm driving through there and all of a sudden have to check my speed because I see your car parked up there.
And
So
but
it's
I'll be more than
effective.
glad. It is effective, but also, like I said, I did have one citizen call, and she felt that the officer should have returned back to his car.
Well, give her my number.
So, but I'll heed your notice, and I will address that and post a dummy car.
No, I think it'd be good to get this in people's minds. I'd like to see that sign on each end of the city by the speed limit. And I don't know how anybody else
What kind of
feels
sign
there.
would you want there?
I'd say,
Dummy car head?
threaten them within their life if they speed.
Due diligence given, I cannot do that. However, the speed fine is doubled. I have looked into the mechanical sign that flashes the light. That would be a useful tool, but the batteries are something like $2,900
Oh,
to
well,
replace
yeah.
those. So if the batteries are $2,900, I'm sure the actual unit is 2 or 3 times that.
I'll stand out there and wave a flag, Chief.
I will give you a little badge and a whistle, and
Well, I've followed people into town from the other county, and they're driving 45, 50 miles an hour, they don't even slow down. Just-
a lot of people think that that's the speed limit that comes from the other county.
Yeah.
But I'll set something out there and see if we
Does
can
this
come up
seem
with
to bother
correction.
anybody else up here, or is it just me? Lisa?
No, it's noted. I've received calls, and as best that I could. It's kind of hard to, like, again, have one officer everywhere.
No, I understand that, yeah.
But I think placement of the car, if it worked on you, I'm sure it'll work
Yeah, it
on
did.
somebody else.
It was very
You know,
effective.
if you could place it every once in a while on 15th, probably would be.
That's what he's talking about. That's what we
No, I
got.
thought he was talking about straight 98.
Well, anywhere, I don't
Yeah.
care, as long as we got empty cars.
I will address that and see if we can come up with a better solution for you.
Anybody? All right, thank you, Chief.
Yes, sir.
All right, Chief Sam?
Yes, sir. Thank you. So updates right now until we talk about what we're going to vote on tonight, and I'll give a prelude to that too. The fire station repairs continue. The bathroom has had all the plumbing replaced. We don't have the labor to do the drywall. We're going to do it in-house, so we're waiting on a couple plumbing fixtures to come in, and then all the members of the department are going to help drywall the bathroom, and we'll have a functioning bathroom at the station, which is good progress. It's all new plumbing, so it should last a long time. That should be done by the end of the month. Travis, our assistant chief, sitting in the back here, has been working on an AFG FEMA grant. That's applying for a replacement truck, which was budgeted in the proposed fire assessment. If that goes through, it would free up quite a bit of money. It's a match grant. We match like 15%. We sought out some reference letters, and Neil Dunn's office replied back and said they would give us a recommendation letter for FEMA, which is, our understanding helps quite a bit. Other than that, we're just keep working on everything else. There's not a lot of money to keep going with the station after the bathroom, so we'll kind of be at a holding point. But we're still submitting grant applications. We just got our toolbox delivered that we had got donated for, I think it's $2,200 worth of tools. And so we're still seeing that. And then tonight, you guys know we're gonna vote on adopting the initial resolution for the fire assessment. The 100% rates come in at residential of $356 per unit, non-residential of 50 cents per square foot, capped at 8,150 square feet. So the cap for that would be $4,075 for a commercial rate. Vacant land would be charged at $54 per parcel. If we vote on this tonight and it passes, we will send out 21-day notices letting everyone know what their actual bill is going to be. There's some estimates given to you guys, but those are not for sure for the top ratepayers. We have to double check and confirm for accuracy. And then if this passes tonight, we'd set up a special workshop on the 5th so citizens, when they got their letters, could come in and bring up their concerns or how they feel about it. And then on the 13th, that's when we would adopt the final resolution of intent, and then bills would get mailed from there. So that's kind of our progress on that, and when we get to the resolution, we'll go from there.
Thank you, Chief. Yes, sir.
I thought at one time we talked about a 78%.
Yes, so we can look at that for this first year, since we're already been funded off the general fund. If it's 79% is what we have to fund, and so we could do that for the first year, which would be my recommendation, because we already we received money from the general fund. So for the first year, residential rates would be $281 per dwelling unit, and commercial rates would be 40 cents per square foot, and then vacant land would be $43 per parcel.
Yeah, some of these people are getting hit pretty hard at 100%. And for this to just be thrown on people all of a sudden, some people in the town haven't heard about this at all. And probably some of the business places are not aware of how much this is going to be. And I'm thinking if we can do 79%, I mean, we've got to do it, in my opinion. We've got to have the rating in order to keep everybody's insurance rate as reasonable as possible. But this first year, because it's unexpected by everyone, if we could do 79%, that would help a little bit. And then next year, we could work it into the tax structure or whatever.
Yeah, we already have everything built in it if we went 100%. Obviously, we have to vote on this yearly. So, my suggestion to the council would be do 79% when we send the individual this year, and then go to the 100% when we add it on the tax bill, and people know that's coming, and we can let them know that when we send their letters out, so they'll understand, hey, here's the first year at a reduced rate because we've already been funded, and then next year this is what your rate's going to be. And then obviously we would have to adopt it yearly. So, any other questions?
Thank you. All right, that's gonna come up again as far as the thing. Any other? Thank you, Chief.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. See, Philip is out sick. We have his report. Is there anything that anyone's gonna, or we just see what we got and we're good with it?
There's nothing out of the ordinary in his report, so he has no comment.
All right, what is 429 rereads in Gulf County?
That means that we have those meter registers that aren't doing their job, so we have to go physically go reread those meters.
In Gulf County?
We don't have that many in Gulf County.
That's what, well, I was wondering if somebody moved in during the night.
Well, luckily, there's a slash between the two words, so I'm assuming that it's 429 rereads, some in Gulf County.
All right, so the rereads are that where we have meters that are not reading properly?
That is correct.
And that's what we've been phasing in?
Right.
All right, I have a suggestion, and I may be the only one that has, I like the information that's provided to us. Is there any way to get a spreadsheet instead of me trying to keep up with these pages every month and try to refer to them that would lay out so we could look at more than 1 month at a time? We'd have a reference to
Most
what happened
definitely.
3 months ago, or
Good idea.
Sure. Philip's already got a spreadsheet that he updates monthly about the water usage as a whole, and he has that for the past few years. And so he brings that to the council maybe once a year or so, or at the request of council members, of course. I can have him
if you
dust
could-
that off.
Yeah, if we could use that, and then just to have a reference of what's going on 3 months ago or 2 months ago, I find that information useful. Same for the police. Is that some of your categories are monthly?
Yes, sir.
If we had something that showed us what happened
I can give you a spreadsheet.
progressively through the year, that would
be.
be I would like that.
Yes, so that's already on our system as the monthly statistics come in, and also what Dade County Sheriff's Department when we call in our calls. But that's something I can't bring up. It's already in the works, it's just not printing.
Bring that, okay, that'd be great.
And also, Mr. Wallace, in answer to your question about the speed signs, They're $3,050 a sign. And that's without the batteries.
Okay, so I'm thinking just a sign that says strictly enforced would be sufficient. If, they surely don't cost.
No, sir, I'm sure it's, I'll get with Phil when he returns.
You know, and everybody else here may feel differently than I do, but I'm tired of seeing people fly through here.
They fly through 98. We all know that. No matter if you're walking or sitting, watching it. I have a question on the meters that aren't reading correctly. So why is that? Are they old? Can we solve the problem so that our fellows don't have to constantly go out and read them?
It's not so much the meter, it's the registers the readings and transport it electronically or over the wires, wirelessly to our machines. We've been told that we've had a few bad batches of the registers. And so what that means, you got to switch those out. And they are being given to us at no charge
Okay.
for replacement. But we will admit that we still are out our labor when it comes to getting these things switched out
So we are repairing them.
as time goes
As
on.
time goes on, okay.
Right. Something you can't do
Right.
overnight. So as we get time, we get a few people out, like on a Saturday or something, and spend all day just switching those little buggers out.
The park at the playground equipment at the municipal park looks really nice.
There's still a couple things missing. They haven't been received yet, but they'll get that in just
It
as
looks
quick
good.
as it gets here.
Colors look nice too.
And I guess, Chief, silence can sometimes be interpreted as agreeing. I have concerns about us becoming our one main drag being a blue light. When you drive through town and you see nothing but police cars and blue lights on the road, I just want to, I'm very cognizant of that we need to be careful with strictly enforced. I don't want us to be all of a sudden that we have no tolerance. I don't mean for somebody going 60 miles an hour, but I certainly would hate to see us become 37 miles an hour deserves a $140 ticket.
That is correct. And you and I have spoken about this before. I think we're both in line with that same, because we are a beach community. We don't want the idea of everybody's going to get a ticket. However, you can also address that by still stopping the violator, advising them what they're doing, and give them a written warning, which monetarily doesn't take out of their pocket.
Well, I just wanted to counter. It sounded as if from my left hand here that we were, maybe we need to drag them down the road or something. I don't want to do
Public
that.
safety for everybody has to be first and foremost,
So I-
but also
I just thought I
consideration
should
for
speak
the...
up so that you'll know there might be a little discrepancy
Right.
between
No,
what.
no, I understand, but there's also a consideration for the pocketbook too.
Yeah.
Sometimes education goes a lot further. Now, I also have an understanding that the citation is written by the violator. If the violator's pulled over and advised of what they're doing wrong, and it's their informing the officer that it's the officer's fault for doing his job, then the ticket itself will write itself.
I understand.
Well put.
All right, Mr. Clerk.
Well, I'm going to go back to the question about Philip's report. He actually sends that to me in a PowerPoint, but when I make the packet, it converts it to a PDF, so we have that, just not showing up.
Well, does that mean it'll show up in our
Yeah,
packet?
I can make it show up at the next month's packet.
Yeah, if we could do that progressively, that, I really would appreciate that. All right.
All right. As this meeting is the 9th of January, I got my bank statements last Friday, got as far as I could today. Wasn't able to give you your front sheet, but you haven't seen the second sheet since the year closed out. October 1st, these cash balances are accurate. A couple I'm going to draw attention to is the third one down is the canal reserve. There is $155,000 encumbered in there for the beach renourishment project. It is not budgeted, but it's encumbered as part of that. That's where it was coming from. There's also $50,000 encumbered for a pavilion at the canal, in the canal park. There's
How
also
much?
$50,000 we encumbered. We can change it if we need.
Oh, man, yeah, we won't spend near that.
Okay. There's also 5 new cash accounts that have never been on your report before. The first one's the Civic Center. Since we started charging for this building, the rent, we've been putting that aside to do updates and repairs to this building. That's the balance there. I get asked frequently how much is in the boat ramp fund, so I've added that to your report. The infrastructure circuit tax that was passed by Bay County has been added to your report. We have collected $76,968. A forfeiture fund has been added to your report. That is the revenues we have from forfeitures from the police department. And then the pier fund, which we dedicated when we started our pier grant process, of $300,000. The only account in the negative is the water fund. That will come back positive as we've submitted our alternate water source reimbursement in the amount of $17,231. And the canal project has been closed out, so there is no more money for the canal project coming out of the canal reserve. I'm looking at Jeff to make sure I'm right, but it's totally done. And that should be it.
Okay. Thank you. Questions for the clerk on the table? Anyone? Okay. Appreciate it. All right, Mel.
I got a couple things. Number one, we always like to look at the building permit numbers during this particular meeting each month. One thing that stands out in this particular thing for 2017 is, look at the new homes permitted in 2017, a total of 47. If you look at May, there was one triplex, which is 3 residential units. So if you add that 3 to the 47, we've had 50 new residential units permitted in 2017. And if you look at how that compares to the previous years, we kind of blew the few previous years out of the water. So we are growing. And if you will see the January report, of course, next month, but so far in January, we have 8 new permits for new homes. So at some point, we're going to run out of property to build on, but that may not be for a while. You can also look at the total number of permits in the year. We went from 338 to 391. So not only are we building new homes, we're getting our electrical systems redone, we're getting our HVACs replaced, we're getting roofs replaced. That's what a dog says anyway, woof, right? So that's a positive note for us. The other thing is, we are not very good at communicating with the public what we have accomplished and what we hope to accomplish. And so I updated our work plan. It's 10 pages, so I will not read each item individually, but I will highlight some of these things. The first thing we put on here, of course, is our vision statement and mission statement that was done a couple years ago. It's highlighting this particular area here. We talked about redoing the EPCI contract and rebidding it, not for the purpose of getting rid of Beau Creel, but for the purpose of at least going through the process to see if there was anyone else out there that even does that particular stuff. But I'm doing the RFQ even as we speak, so that will be ready for your review in February. At that point, we'll go out for RFQs and see what's out there. One of the impetus of doing this was when we reviewed the contract for EPCI, we noticed that the contract we have in hand in no way, shape, or form is similar to what actually happens with what services they do perform. And so we didn't want to change a contract without going out for bids to make it fair for others. Also, it says that Adrian's working on a employee handbook. We had put this in a few months ago. We've done quite a few of the policies already. Those are all done. The comprehensive plan will be done in 2018 in the spring and into the summer. Once that is complete, we can work on the LDR changes that we've all been talking about for quite some time. And of course, that'll take a few months to get through that one as well, so that will be 2018 into 2019. Our ordinance codification is an annual thing, so at the end of January, I'll send in all the ordinance passed in 2017 to get our code updated. And this is the long list. This is the one about maintaining and construct new infrastructures. Of course, the canal is done, Parker Park Phase 1 is done, City Hall is done, the alternate water source is in the process, 36th Street Bridge utility relocations, that's this year in 2018. Highway 98 resurfacing, that's in progress, as you all know when you try to go to Panama City. Sewer manhole rehab and relining, we just did some this past couple of months, so that's ongoing. We did some smoke testing back in February. We're going to do some more in 2018. 15th Street sidewalks, I think Jeffrey talked about that very well earlier. Beach renourishment, we talked about that grant as well. The pier repairs, Dewberry's work is complete on the T. It is open. Everything is okay. There's one spot they found that needs to get redone, but that doesn't affect the viability of the T at this point. The boat ramp lighting, cooler, fish cleaning station. The mayor and Phil has been working on this pretty hard recently, and I think we might be able to get this accomplished February into March, some time frame, you think?
We got to go ahead. You saw my email?
Yes, sir.
I think I forwarded that to you from St. Joe Company.
Correct.
So we're gonna move forward as soon as Philip gets the
Cooler.
Have the thing with Duke. He thought we had one on file. I don't want to call it an application, that may be the right word for that location.
Right.
And if that is the case, then they're gonna come mark it, put the pedestal in, and we'll run.
The conduit.
Yeah, and the easement issue will no longer be, there won't be an easement issue. So that's, so we'll
Progress.
be ready for spring.
That's the goal anyway.
That's the goal.
That's right.
Does the fish cleaning station come with the cooler?
It does not. That's what Philip and the guys are going to do. They've ordered a roof that's pre-made that will help that, but for the most part, they're going to install it. Also, the pavilion at the canal, Jeff talked about that earlier as well. The plan is still being reviewed by DEP. 14th Street walkover, those plans have been approved by DEP. We hope to finish that sometime next month in February. Conduit at Parker Park. In addition to conduit for the electrical at the boat ramp, we got to do conduit in Parker Park this month, which is on tap to get done for the Gumbo Festival. They have some needs out there. Municipal Park Playground, as you know, it's most of the way done. It's looking really good. Working with Dewberry to get the grant closed out once that's done. The Shell Shack Walking Bridge, that's the area right in front of the Shell Shack and the Marina building. That is in disrepair, so they've been working on that the past couple weeks. Trash cans on the beach, as you know, we don't have nearly as many as we need, so the guys have been working on adding some cans to the beach. They have done some work repainting the Municipal Park Pavilion. They haven't started yet on the fence at the lift station there right by the new City Hall, but they'll be fixing that up to make it look a little better and paint that as well. And that way the colors will match, which would be kind of nice.
What color we doing?
Same color as City Hall. We thought pink wouldn't work, but you never know. Philip is working on the road rating for our streets so that we have a big package of roads that needs repaired. He'll bring that back in a few months so we can determine what we want to do for the next budget season. Benches along 98, that's a project we've talked about the past couple of months. Once we get the locations, the guys are going to build the benches and go ahead and install them. Water tower and storage maintenance, the million-gallon storage as well as our water tower really haven't had a lot of work done to them in quite some time. The only thing that's been done since I've been here in the past 3 years is simply the washing of the two items, and that really isn't maintenance per se. We're going to have to bring someone in with the expertise to work on things like the bolts that hold the steel together and things of that sort, in addition, of course, going inside, which is something we do every few years as well. But that'll be discussed at budget time, but it's something we're going to have to do. We talked about utilizing the county's GIS more, and we did use them extensively for the comp plan process. So no reason to reinvent the wheel on that. When it comes to the police department, they have redone all their policies and procedures. The next step now is to bring that before the city council for approval. Update the training, field training officer program with updated procedures and tracking, et cetera. That is part of the above policy, so that will come out at the same time. There's a walk and talk program, which is an effort to get the officers seen in the neighborhoods, being receptive to talking to the public. That's an ongoing thing. The body cameras are working, but they're reinstalling the hard drive with some money we recently appropriated for them, so they're working on that. When it comes to some of their uniforms and equipment, now all of their weapons and their gear are now uniform among all the officers. In other words, they don't have to share stuff as much, things of that sort. When it comes to the fire rescue department, certified firefighters are now at 11. It used to be 2. The ISO plan was developed to stop the regression to a 10. The breathing apparatuses, we had a grant awarded for 5 of those for a value of $30,000. The mold mitigation was completed by ServPro at the station. The bunk room in the station has been remodeled. Bathroom has had all the plumbing replaced, and remodeling is in progress. So since our new fire chief has been here, he's been rather busy. And so he's continues to work on that night and day. When it comes to the MBARA, we did the bid opening for the 2018 project just on Friday. We got approval today from the state that they're working on the agreement. That is a total of about $170,000. So again, we are just the intermediary in that the money goes through us, but we don't use our funds for that. And that completes our 10 pages.
One question. I know in the past it had been mentioned we had an issue with, I think, Duke on the bridge to get it, stuff done there. Has that been resolved? I think it was at the one time I remember was talked of getting the road paved for the people to come in and so forth through the boat parking lot.
There's been no resolution of that.
Okay, I was curious. Thank you.
I was just told they were working with DOT to come up with an easement issue. Language.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
That's all I know.
That's all I have, Your Honor.
Thank you. Well done. Questions for City Administrator? All right, moving on. Have the first reading of ordinance 688. Do I have a motion to read? By title only?
So moved.
I have a motion and a second.
Second?
Excuse me?
I'll go for the second. You
Oh,
forgot
okay.
one.
We got
Sorry.
2 seconds. All right.
Just 2 seconds.
That's good. That's good. Any opposition to reading?
No.
Please do so.
Ordinance number 688, an ordinance of the City of Mexico Beach, Florida, prohibiting businesses from operating on the beach without a beach vending permit, providing an exception for businesses meeting specified conditions, providing definitions, providing beach vending permit approval process, providing permissible locations for activities conducted under a beach vending permit, providing permissible activities under a beach vending permit, prohibiting heavy wooden lounger-style chairs on the beach after September 30th, 2018, providing a limited exception to leave no trace for holders of beach vending permits, repealing ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict, providing for codification, and providing an immediately effective date.
Okay. That is the first reading. That will go on our February meeting for second reading. Thank you. Okay. Sure.
That didn't sound very enthusiastic. I just had a
Well,
question.
you haven't been here for 6 months and
Yeah, well, I'll tell you
But
this.
that's okay.
I'll
Go
tell
ahead.
you this. I'll tell you like I told some of the council. I would rather lay in a bed of Georgia fire ants covered in sweet tea than to have to keep coming to this meeting defending Leave No Trace. Leave No Trace was passed by almost 20% of the vote. That's a landslide, and you should know that, because I think you won your seat by almost an identical margin. And what you said when you won it was that you were going to protect the will of the people and the vote of the people. I appreciate that you're going to extend Hector some time on his wooden chairs, and I totally get that. But to start allowing businesses or beach vendors exemptions that aren't allowed to the general public just doesn't make sense. I feel like that, and not just myself, everyone who voted for Leave No Trace, it has no exemptions. And to start providing exemptions, I think, would go against the will of the people and the vote of the people. So I hope that you guys will consider protecting that. You know, those opposed to Leave No Trace said it was going to run off our tourists. Depending on which report you look at, tourism was up either 8 or 10% in Mexico Beach this past season. They said it was going to raise our taxes. While you raised our taxes, it didn't have anything to do with Leave No Trace. So it's working well, and I'm just asking you guys to please protect it and protect the will of the people. When you're sitting up there, you don't always know what the people expect or want, and you have to make a lot of phone calls and get out there and talk, but this is a situation where the people made it easy for you. We signed a petition. People came out and signed the petition. We got the required number of signatures in less than a week, and then the vote stands for itself. So please protect that, and I hope, Mayor, you keep your word to the people when you said you were going to protect the vote of the people. Thank you.
All right, next is ordinance 690, which is a second reading. Do I have a motion to read by title only?
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any opposition to reading? Please do so.
Ordinance number 690, an ordinance vacating and abandoning the City of Mexico Beach's interest in the 37th Street right-of-way lying across the property located at 3606 US Highway 98, described as lots 2 and 3, Block 1, Mexico Beach, Unit Number 6 plat, according to the plat thereof, recorded in the public records at Plat Book 7, page 75, vesting title as provided by law, repealing all ordinances in conflict herewith, and reciting an effective date.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to adopt?
Before proceeding, I'll just remind you, this is a public hearing. I encourage you to take any comments from anyone in the audience or from the council members regarding just any points for or against this. Again, the standard we're looking for is that the abandonment would be in the public interest and advance the general welfare of the
And
city.
that should be done prior, even if I don't get it, I'm assuming, do it before.
It's better to do it
Okay,
before.
we'll open for a public hearing. Give anyone here an opportunity to discuss or let their comments be heard concerning ordinance 690, which was just read. Any comments from the citizens concerning ordinance 690? Yes, please come forward.
Lisa Logan, 402 Maryland. I personally would not like to see the city give up city property on the canal. I think it is a hedge against something that may happen in the future, but I also believe that it's giving up city property for the benefit of a very few number of people. That is a piece of property that is open to thousands of people to use if it ever goes back into service. So I think the question is there benefit to the city and to the residents to give up city property for the benefit of a very few number of people. And I ask you to consider that, and I ask you to look at the fact that the condominium was built there knowing that that was city property. People purchased the condos knowing that that was city property. So to give up city property that could possibly be used by so many people to the benefit of just a few is questionable. So please think about that. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I,
Just one vote.
yeah, okay. I didn't see anybody's hand.
I just have a question. Mary Lee Rollerson, Texas Drive. We own this piece of property, correct? We do not own the piece of property that our boat ramp, our current city boat ramp sits on. Right?
That is correct.
When we have a lease on that property, for how long?
20 years.
Okay, when is that 20 years up?
14. So it was
Well, it
done
was
in
signed in 09.
2009, is correct.
So-
2029.
So what if the St. Joe Company says in 29, we're not renewing, we want it back? Then what do we do? Where do we go? I mean, the boat ramp's important to my husband and I because currently we own 2 boats, not just one. So, so I just have that question. Is there any place else for us?
Well, we have the other ramp, on the other side of the bridge.
The one over by Chuck's?
Miramar.
Miramar.
Yeah. Can that accommodate? I mean, wouldn't it take those 2 to accommodate the number of boats we have coming in here and the amount of boat traffic that we have? I'm just curious.
Okay, thanks. Other questions or comments, I should say? All right, we'll close the public hearing and move back to the table.
I have a concern about abandoning it, and basically, my concern is the same thing as what Mary Lou said, that who's to say that in 14 years or whatever, that St. Joe isn't gonna say, sorry, but the lease is up. Now, could it happen? Sure. Would it happen? Who knows? That's the unknown. And holding the boat ramp for us isn't hurting us. And so why give it up just because we're not using it right now? So I'm not in favor of abandoning the boat ramp.
Okay?
And I've thought about it, and I don't know what they want to use it for, but it's an asset. I've talked to Philip, and we had some discussion about every once in a while we have to dredge back in there, and for some reason it's hard to get a small dredge in at the St. Joe, at the boat ramp there. But I don't see why we couldn't. We have 14 years, approximately 14 years left on our lease. Why can't we just lease that boat ramp to them for 14 years? And if we get a 20-year renewal on that, renew it to them for 20 years. That way we don't give up something that is an asset. And then they want to, I don't know what they want to do. They want to be able to walk way across it. That'll be fine, build it. But if we have to take it back, then they take it down.
That sounds like a good idea. Then we're not losing anything. We're leasing it out just as St. Joe is leasing it to us.
The only comment I have on the particular boat ramp is 14 years from now, we will have grown significantly. That boat ramp is right on 98. If it's being used anyway, there becomes a traffic problem of what to do with trailers and vehicles. I can't imagine what it would be if St. Joe didn't renew, and that's a potential. I'm not saying it's not. But if they didn't remove, I can't imagine what that traffic problem would be 14 years from now of that being one of our main boat ramps. I think what we need to do in the 14 years, if we do vote to give this up, is probably look for another location as an alternative, very similar as what we're trying to do for an alternative for water supply that we can, as a city, purchase and have set back that wouldn't be the safety issue that we have now.
I'm for getting rid of that property. The city doesn't need to own that. We have a problem with any kind of accidents that may happen there, then the city is responsible. I am pretty sure that the boat ramp that we're leasing for, what, $1 from St. Joe will forever be open. They're in the business to make money. They may charge for it 20 years from now. But I think we're better off retrieving some money to give to the fire department to try to finish that building so people can breathe in there. And that amounts to what are they giving? $20,000, $25,000-ish? Something like that? 20? And I think it's worthwhile. And I think probably, I don't know, I haven't talked with anybody over there, that they're not going to be interested in leasing that. I don't know what alternative they have for that, but so be it. Let it go.
Yeah, my concern is not only the liability, but if you, the lease is written as an automatic renewable 20-year lease with St. Joe. And in that language, there are stipulations that if we don't perform as the leasee, they give us in writing things that they feel like we're deficient in, and we have so many days, I believe it's 15, to correct or address them. I'm fairly confident that as being our neighbor and annexing into the city, that St. Joe isn't going to, quote, pull the plug. Could they maybe address some language issues, but I don't see, they need us as much as we need them now that they have annexed in. So I have maybe more confidence in some that St. Joe will continue to automatically renew the lease. And my history of that existing boat ramp that we're referring to on 98 is that we really have lived a charmed life by not getting someone seriously hurt there. With our growth, it's never to me a functional boat ramp. Nor would it ever be considered a functional boat ramp. It's coming off of 98, it's just not practical. It served us for some time, but it's to return to that. If there was an emergency, we do have another ramp. And I say an emergency, something happened over there, a boat sunk, or somebody couldn't, I mean, it's not like we don't have another alternative. So from a liability issue, I do agree with some of the ideas here about the city giving up property, but in that particular location for what it would gather, what it would gain for us, I support getting rid of it. So we had a motion to read by title only. Is there now a motion to adopt, unless there's more conversation?
So moved.
Then we have a motion to adopt ordinance 690. Do we have a second?
I'll do a second.
We have a second. Call the roll, please.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Ms. Albrecht?
No.
Mayor Kathy?
Yes.
Mr. Wallace?
Yes.
Mr. Putnam?
No. Okay. Moving on is resolution 2018-01, which is the fire assessment ordinance, fire assessment resolution.
Before we proceed on that, let me make one or two comments. This resolution, the numbers in it reflect 100% funding. That was what the consultant asked for and worked with me in this resolution. But it sounds like Daniel's suggesting, I think it was 79% funding.
Yes, for the first year, because we were already funded off of the general fund, so it wouldn't make sense to have that much reserves in our account for fire.
So assuming there's some interest from our council to follow staff recommendation, I would suggest that we go through the exercise of updating these numbers before delving too much into the resolution, because they're currently too high. You could leave them at this 100% rate and look at this issue again at your final resolution time period. This really is going to reflect what's going out on the notices to the individual folks. That's a big portion of what we're doing tonight. We're not adopting this fee. We're putting all the gears into place to make the full notices happen, to make the next hearing happen, to direct staff to put together a letter to everybody in the town telling them how much they're going to owe. So that's new information tonight. The staff recommendation is these lower amounts, and I've already done those calculations. We can update that unless you're inclined to do the 100% funding rate that's shown in here already.
Well, can we motion the resolution as written, knowing that at the 13th meeting, the option to change?
You can, and all the letters that go out will have these.
They will reflect 100%.
That's correct.
That was the direction you guys gave us
Yeah.
last meeting. This was just my suggestion toward implementing it. Obviously, I'm looking at the marathon, not right now, but the suggestion you guys gave us last meeting was to adopt this at the 100% and have the option of going down. So that's why it was written this, we worked on it this way, because that's the direction we were given.
By the fact of just this discussion acknowledges what it says, is that, do we need to do anything different?
No, it's written fine as is, and
Okay.
if it's adopted as is, the higher rates will be what go out in the individual notices.
So everyone will get the 100% notice.
Right.
And so they're going to be stroking out at that.
Well, there will be,
We'll get better.
more people will be here.
And that was the direction you guys gave us, is that in future, when we vote this again, we would do 100% on the tax roll, so they would know, and then we'd say, hey, we're going to work with you the first year, here's what we're going to do to ease the blow, you know?
I don't understand doing the 100% period if we're planning on doing the 79%.
Because it's written that way, and that's what we said we were gonna do.
And if we do the 79%, then we have to hold off, don't we? We
what?
can't, I mean, if we, what Jerry is saying, the 79%, so if you wrote the letter as 79%, we couldn't approve this tonight.
Oh, you could. We would just make handwritten changes to make the numbers reflect 79%, adopt it with those changes, and then send out the letters. with the
Well, why don't we,
I say.
why don't we stay the course we set,
Yeah.
which was, we're gonna put up the 100%, we're gonna send the notices out, and we're gonna get the reaction, and we know that there is some lead room. That's what we said we were gonna do.
And that's
So why
perfectly
wouldn't we
logical.
continue that path?
I agree with you.
I don't much see any point in doing the 100% if we were actually going to do 79 all the time. And it's just going to confuse people, and we're going to have 5,000 people in
But
there.
we
at
may not
100%.
do 79, that's what we
Right.
talked about.
Th-
We
that's
said
what they
we
were
would have
saying
to
at the-
Get the numbers in and see, we knew that was an
I
option.
thought we've already run the numbers at 79.
We did, that would just be this first year, because we already collect taxes, but
That's what
the
I'm
direction
talking
was, yeah, this would let them know what future was when we started the higher number, and then the direction I was given, which I thought everyone agreed on, was go ahead and tell them the 100%, because we can always come down, we cannot go back up.
Right.
So if something changes, just like the millage rate.
Well, this is what we instructed, this is what we asked to have given to us. I'll again ask for a motion to read Resolution 2018 by title only.
Can I ask one question?
Absolutely.
Does this mean we're going to have to send out 2 letters then, in essence,
No.
down the road?
No, you can adopt a lower rate at your final hearing. when-
And then we don't have to send the public out the 79%?
No.
If we adopt that?
They would have seen the higher rate already, and
Yeah, I
if
believe they
were-
will, yeah.
If they prefer the lower rate, they'll be relieved that it was adopted at the lower rate.
You are going to get 2 mailings. You're going to get a notification of the hearing, and then you're going to get your bill.
Well, we're going to get that anyway.
Yes,
no matter
exactly.
what.
There's no additional.
I'm just trying to stop another letter
Yeah,
going
there
out
won't.
that we don't need to do.
There won't be one.
Okay.
Motion to read Resolution 2018 by title only. Do I have a motion? So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any opposition to reading? Please do so.
Resolution number 2018-01, a resolution of the City of Mexico Beach, Florida, relating to the provision of fire protection services, facilities, and programs, providing authority, purpose, and definitions, providing legislative findings, describing the method of assessing fire protection services assessment costs against properties within the City of Mexico Beach, determining the fire assessment cost and initial fire protection services assessments, creating a hardship exemption, directing the preparation of an assessment roll, authorizing a public hearing and directing the provision of notice therefore, providing severability, conflicts, and an effective date.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adopt?
So moved.
Second. Have a motion, second. Any questions from the table? Any comments from our citizens? Call the roll, please.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Ms. Albrecht?
Yes.
Mayor Catton?
Yes.
Mr. Wallace?
No.
Mr. Putnam?
Yeah. All right, thank you. Moving to other business. Accessory structures is listed with no name, or I'm not sure who's heading that up.
I think we did this at the last meeting.
Where
I
we,
think that came up.
I said I'm not sure who's heading that up.
right, where we left it
I
from the
know we
last
talked
meeting
about
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Misunderstood.
was that the question was to reissue the ticket to the Castros because the special master hearing was in essence kicking the can down the road. There was a technicality that because our code enforcement officer was not in attendance, that the special master didn't really render an opinion. So the question was, do we reissue the ticket and then have the special master have a new hearing and then have code enforcement attend that hearing? In the meantime, we needed to decide whether we want to go ahead and proceed in that manner or change the LDR. In other words, some members of the council felt that we should change the LDR and allow what has happened to continue. Others felt that we should issue the ticket and let the chips fall where they may. So the crux of the reason the ticket was written was in 2.04.02, where it talks about allowable accessory structures by land use district. In letter A there, you see what is allowed: tool sheds, garages, greenhouses, storage sheds, pools, hot tubs, gazebos, private recreational facilities, dog houses, et cetera, and other customary uses not restricted or prohibited either specifically or by nature or performance below. Our stance is that a rental in this particular case would be prohibited because number 3 says apartments. However, the other side of the coin by the person who got the ticket was that they is allowed under number 1 under other customary uses, not restricted or prohibited. So that's where we are at this point.
The issue then is whether it can be rented.
The issue is really not so much as it being rented as
Just being there.
just being there.
Okay, what is the alternative that one would expect if this goes forward? Do we have any idea what the master would recommend if these were not allowed? I mean, would we want them torn down?
So the substance of the law wasn't decided during that hearing, but we're still confident that our code is sufficient that these are prohibited. It lists what's allowed, doesn't really fit what's allowed. It lists what's prohibited, it's similar to what's prohibited. I would say the purpose of tonight is less about whether we issue another citation. It's that the prior meeting, it sounded as though some of the council was interested in reevaluating the rules and maybe changing the rules. Maybe we want to look in a different policy direction. I think for tonight, this is the opportunity for you to express your views. If there's not much interest in that, then we stick with our rules. We go enforce the ordinance as written and issue another citation at the next opportunity. If there's some real interest in updating the rules, the mayor made very good comments last meeting. You don't just start ignoring your ordinances on a long, ongoing basis. I already prepared a short moratorium ordinance that you can adopt while you're looking at changing the rules. But for tonight, I think really the threshold matter is there really much interest in changing the rules? And if not, then I think we just move forward with enforcement.
What was the vote last time?
To withhold enforcement until.
Was it 4-1?
Until we talked.
What?
It was withhold, I think it was until we,
Right, I think it was 4.
I think it was 4-1, and I think, you said, I think we should acknowledge the fact that it doesn't agree with the LDR, and if it's a 4-1 vote up here about looking at possibly changing the LDR, and you say you could do something that lets the public know that, and that we're looking into the possibility
Yes.
of changing the LDR.
Yes, we
And
can
so,
do it more formally than just.
in that case, everything's tabled until we deal with that.
Yes.
Okay.
My concern is, from what I understand, that the Castros came to the city and checked off every box and got every building permit and was issued building permits. I'm not aware that they went behind anything or anybody. And so if this is not allowed by number 3, I guess it is, then I personally think the city is partly responsible, because if they gave them the building permit or permits, then they shouldn't have been given
See.
building permits. No, that's all right.
I'm just letting
Yeah.
her know I
Yeah, no,
see.
that's all right. So, that's my concern. If they did check all the boxes, then what have they done wrong? If the city gave them approval for all this?
Well, that does create a complication, but the counter to that is what the city approved was some utility improvements. It wasn't a particular use of the property, permission to do a certain thing with the property. But that is, yes, that will be a matter that would be contested in the hearing. I'm certain of that.
So maybe we need to just say, we need to straighten things out or take a better look when people come in and ask for a building permit and a lesson learned.
Well, I think that's opening up another can of worms, as to, the possibility of maybe us even needing our own engineer that looks over all this. But that's another ballgame.
Okay, anybody else? I see a hand in the back, come on.
I think that the mayor is of the opinion that these aren't allowed. Our attorney has provided a list of 8 that we know of in Mexico Beach already today. And in talking with the property appraiser site, unless they were built at the same time as the main structure, they can't do a search on their database. So basically, the only way to look at it is go through one by one, almost 3,000 properties. But just driving around, we've uncovered 6 or 8. And the property appraiser's office sent us a list, and there was a couple on that list, but the rest, those were constructed at the same time, but the rest were not. So we know that there are others in Mexico Beach today. And the language in the LDR is very ambiguous. It says in other customary uses. I talked to Sue, who's the code enforcement coordinator in Bay County today. They are allowed in Bay County. There's no restrictions on them in Bay County other than you have to follow Florida Building Code. They have to be inspected, all the permits have to be proper, and they're allowed. So it's definitely customary in our area. The law is supposed to be clear so that property owners should know what is and what is not allowed. And if you go to the city and you obtain permits and you fill out all the paperwork and you do everything, no one asks us. But if you're putting a bathroom and you're heated and cooled space, and you've got one that you're improving, that you're expanding, and it's already set up that way, it wasn't like we hid anything. We did everything right. I know there was a question about our expanded driveway, and the city administrator signed that permit. So we did everything the right way, but we're not the only ones. There are other properties in Mexico Beach who have permitted habitable accessory structures, and you can see them on the property appraiser's website as heated and cooled space, a bed and a bath. and they're allowed in the county with no restrictions. So I would suggest that you look at the LDR and figure out what should it say, because this is an opinion, and people shouldn't come into Mexico Beach and have to call the mayor to get his opinion to determine what's allowed and what's not allowed. It should be clear in the LDR, and when you go to apply for the proper permits, if something's not allowed, it should clearly state it on your permit, or they should clearly make sure that you know that. And this isn't just so the city attorney will know, this isn't just one time. We improved the first structure a decade ago under a different administration, different building department employees, different code enforcement. And it was permitted, properly approved, certificate of occupancy issued then. And then we did the other one in 2015, same thing. To the point where I asked Bo to come out and look at it personally, because I was on the council at the time and I wanted to make sure that we were doing all the right things. So I think not only for us, but for the property owners who already have these, and they are there. They're there. You've got some that are there that aren't permitted, but you have some that are. So you can't, it's not just an issue for us. The issue for us has been that we were personally targeted, and no one else in the city who has an accessory structure was targeted.
Ms. Castro, you may address this council.
I'm addressing
You have referenced several times as if I am the villain here. So if you would please make your comments and leave your personal feelings about me out of it.
It's not a personal feeling.
Well,
It was the gist of the special master hearing.
All you have to do is address us as a group.
It was the gist of the special master hearing, but to the apartment comment, the city administrator read you that and said, it's what's prohibited is apartments. In an email dated August 22nd from the city attorney to the city administrator, he states, it became apparent that the apartment versus not apartment issue does not settle this matter. And he really couldn't say yes or no. He said, well, it exceeds the size of a playhouse. Well, so does half the boat sheds in Mexico Beach. What does that mean? And it's not an apartment. So I think that what you have to do is just clarify what you want. And then anything that's already there, you're going to have to grandfather those in because people did all the right things. Now, if they didn't have the permit, they didn't have the permit. As far as rental goes, I think that the city attorney would tell you state law has dictated that for the city because the city didn't take any steps back in 2012 to put in any restrictions on that. And I think the mayor put that on the agenda some months back, and you guys were told clearly. But it's crazy to me that you can rent out your entire, that somebody in Georgia can rent out the entire house down the street from me for a vacation rental, and we're dealing with the noise, the parking, all kinds of issues, the garbage, and that's not an issue. But if someone has a habitable guest house that's been properly permitted by the city, that they can't, that somehow that's a nuisance. I don't understand that. But Bay County allows it. I tried to look at Panama City Beach's code, and I think that takes a lawyer to read their code. I can't really quite figure it out, and I haven't reached anyone. But I think the real issue is, what does the LDR say? And I don't think that anybody could tell me. City staff, I mean, there's emails between the city attorney and Mel that say he can find as many people who says it's allowed that it isn't. So to say they're not allowed, that's one opinion. You have them already.
Please, I could make a couple of comments. First, again, our purpose tonight is not to go through all the same issues that were in that enforcement hearing, which is kind of what we're doing. It's really to find out, what do you want the rules to be? You don't have to worry about what they are. Just tell us what you're interested in them being. The email to Mel, the point of saying that the apartment versus non-apartment question doesn't control this, it's because we don't have to get to that. This is not similar to what's allowed, so even if there's some argument about apartment versus non-apartment, we never even have to talk about that. We are comfortable that the current rules would not allow something like this. And as far as the state law issue about vacation rentals, that's sort of licensed vacation rentals under state programs. We feel that what that has to do with is, it is renting out your entire house, and this is different. Having individual additional units out back, we don't think is impacted by that statute. And there are reasons why they're different and why that would make sense.
Okay, yes, ma'am. You may come up. We're gonna have to grind this out.
I'm Lynn Newton from 242 Nanook Road. I wrote you all how I feel about this, and I heard a response from one. I think that what I'm interested in is what is right, what is just and right. And if this LDR has been violated, it's illegal. And it shouldn't be. I mean, our land development regulations are written for a purpose. And if you want to grandfather this in, then are you going to encourage all the other residents here to build rental units in their backyard? I mean, is that what we want for our city, my city? Anyway, I hope I made myself clear. Thank you.
Does anyone else from our citizens have a comment? Okay, I understand exactly what you just said, but in light of, I went to the hearing and I've heard from the podium that the mayor is the issue. That seems to be what was brought out at the hearing by the defense of those that were representing the Castro. This isn't a Castro's problem. This is our LDR. 27 years this document has shaped and molded this city to where those of us that have moved here, invested here, live here, have clearly understood the rules. 27 years. And now it appears to me that if you put enough lipstick on a pig, you can call it a duck. And that's simply not the case. And that's what we're trying to do here. Those of you that think that we want to have rental units in our residential areas, I respect your opinion for that. Those of you that think we should have livable space detached from our homes in residential areas, I respect your right to think that. But in no way is that what this document says. In no way. And they can do what they need to do with Bay County. You can do what they need to do with Panama City Beach, and if you think you want one, then you can go over and get one. But for 27 years, we've told people when they come to City Hall, there's been many people that have asked about mother-in-law suites, that have asked about detached accessory apartments, that have been told, no, you can't do that. Many times in 27 years, those people have been turned down. And so for those of you that might think that this is an issue caused by the mayor, it's just that I can read. I understand what this document says. It's clear. It's not fuzzy, it's clear what it says. And it's also clear what it says in the LDR, in the very beginning of this. And I want to read this under 1.06 to make sure that those of you who may think that it's the mayor's issue, it says rules of interpretation, and it states in here that in the event of any question arising concerning the application or regulations, performance standards, definitions, development criteria, or other provisions of this code, the city administrator shall be responsible for the interpretation and shall look to the city comprehensive plan for guidance. Had that happened, this would never be at this table. If someone had done what they were supposed to do, it wouldn't be at this table. And if y'all want, anyone here thinks the mayor is the one that someone needs to come to decide what they can and can't do, well then that's just out of ignorance. pure ignorance. So, Mr. Administrator, city council members, citizens here, this isn't an issue that's being decided by the mayor. I simply said there was a violation, and had it been handled like it should have been handled, we wouldn't be sitting here. But I'm not willing to sit here and continue to be one of the 5 that voted for something or voiced their opinion for something because it's the right thing to do, and it's obviously very clear what it says. And if we don't want to issue the citation, then what we should do is say that the LDR is just not something we want to go by anymore. There's no document that we have, especially when it comes to land use and zoning, that is more important than the LDR. And when you start messing with that, you start giving people grandfathering clauses because they didn't do the right thing, and I do agree, the city should not have issued those permits. They absolutely should not have. But that doesn't make what's happening right. That doesn't make mini motel in a backyard okay. So I think what we should do is simply stay the course, do what the LDR says, and and stop all this foolishness about that it's not an apartment. I don't understand that. So I'm for moving forward, doing what the LDR says, supporting this city and what those that we've done it for 27 years, and start doing what's supposed to be done, and be accountable for what we say we are going to do. All right. So anybody else? Do we want to stay the course? Do you want to? What does everybody want to do? That seems to be, I guess, the question.
I don't want to change the LDR because I think, how many years, 27 you mentioned, I think the council makes decisions for what they believe is right, and I don't like the idea of just changing it because something happens. However, so I don't really want to change the LDR, but I do believe in this instance, since the Castros got every single permit approved, and I don't know if Bo came out and looked at it or not, I don't know. So nobody threw a red flag up that I'm aware of. I just think that we need to bite the bullet and say, okay, we've learned from this, let's go back, let it go, let her continue, but let's see what we need to do so this doesn't happen again.
Okay. I don't see a large need of changing the LDR. I did notice that the definition, there's like no definition for apartment. It seemed like everything works on living unit, and the definition for the living unit in the LDR is slightly different than the state's. My feeling on LDRs and ordinances are that they need to be updated every once in a while to bring conformity. As far as major changes, not particularly. Update them as we're going to in about a year or so to bring state and ours in line. I'm for that. I do have similar concerns, the fact that this went through. We've had several things gone through. We've discussed in the springtime that we pay one way or the other a department who has expertise to do things that in the past hasn't. I think this has dropped through the hole. Not any way in the world challenging whether anyone picked on it. I think if you look at the LDR, try and figure it out, it may not fit. However, we have someone who built this, went through all the situations. I guess my concern is not necessarily where the LDR, after I've had a time to look at it, and that's what I had voted on, was take a time to look at it, not just go forward without figuring out what was going on. My concern, I guess, is what do we want to get out of this? If we go to the special master and everything's towards the plan, towards the city that we're correctly, I guess we could ask someone to tear the building down we could fine them, which typically our fines are set up, it'd be probably twice the amount of the cost of their permit. So I'm not sure where we want to go. Yeah, I think this is probably not in accordance with what our LDR is, and we shouldn't do it again, but where are we going with this? What are we going to
Well, they don't
ask?
tear them down now, Mr. Bond. They don't, you don't.
No, you don't want them to. I know.
No, but you don't do that. It's the use of the buildings. It's not the buildings.
Okay.
It's the use of the buildings.
So then it would be prohibited to be used by family members or anything else or anyone else then?
Well, we don't know that.
No, I'm saying though, if
We
you're
don't
saying
know.
use, we would, in other words, what you're saying is this should revert back to the use of storage or whatever. That's why I'm kind of curious, what are we going to
I'm
answer?
not telling what I don't think it's our place to say this is what you can do. It's already in here what you can do. It's clear.
Well, it's not listed in there. I mean, you can.
What apartments, it says it's prohibited.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
So then.
That's under the prohibited,
Mhm.
number 3. So,
Understand.
okay. So
I
it's
just know where-
just,
I just don't know
it's
where
just
we're
the
going.
use of the structures. It's not that they're there.
Yeah, I went through this 10 or 12 years ago before I moved from Clearwater up here and spent, about $1,800 in getting architectural drawings and all that, and then was told the LDR didn't approve what I wanted to do. I don't see any problem with changing the LDR. There wasn't any LDR 27 years ago regarding this. All of a sudden, it's a big change. So if we're trying to satisfy or please, I don't know if that's the right word. In the first place, you can only build so much square footage on a given lot. Now, I would guess that Ms. Castro probably couldn't build anything else on her lot. But, and I've never seen anything wrong with having a place for my mother-in-law to live. But thank goodness, well, I shouldn't say that. She's not with us now, anyway. But I buy a certain amount of property, and within reason, I should be able to do pretty much what I want to do on that property. And the LDR is telling me, no, you can't do what you thought you wanted to do. And I agree with the mayor. The way it's written now, it's very, very questionable. Matter of fact, I'd nearly say it's breaking the LDR. And that's why I asked last month for us to give us some time to think about this and everybody give it some thought about, is all hell going to break loose if we change the LDR? I don't think so. And I'd much rather have somebody like this living next door to me than a house next door to me that's rented out to college kids for 2 weeks at a time, and you have 18 cars parked out front, et cetera, et cetera. Now, that's a slight exaggeration, but I think you can ask Rex. He lives right down the street from one that had 10 or 12 cars parked out there. So, I mean, we're not going to be hung on the cross if we change the LDR. It's just a matter of rewording it and changing what is intended. And I agree, it needs to be written so anybody can totally understand it, period, without having to go to an attorney to get them to make up their mind what it says. So, that's my 2 cents.
All right.
Anybody else got anything?
Okay, does anyone else, are they inclined to look at allowing rental units in backyards? That's really the primary.
Yeah, that's exactly what, do we want to do that?
If we want to do that, we'll start working towards that, and maybe we'll adopt an ordinance. If we don't want to do that, then I think.
Well, the other thing I've thought about with, say, rental units in the backyard, for instance, in this ordinance, or in the change the LDR, it could be stated that the person that lives in the house must be a permanent citizen and not just renting the house and having rooms in the back that they could rent. For instance, let's use Castro as an example. If she's not living there full-time, could we write this in the LDR that she couldn't rent those?
We can do that.
Yeah, I thought we could do that too. So we can eliminate riffraff in the neighborhood, so to speak, and I'll guarantee you, in this situation, there's not going to be any riffraff living in the backyard there.
As far as the rental units in the backyard, whether I'm for it or against it doesn't make a difference, but I certainly don't see much difference in a rental unit in a backyard of an existing residence versus a house across the street that's a full rental unit. I'm not sure there's much difference. Because in pretty well every neighborhood we have in this city, there are rental units all through our neighborhoods, whether backyard or not, so I don't know.
So if we looked at the LDR, changed some wording, would that allow the Castros to continue renting? And we just bite the bullet and say, okay, we need to clarify the LDR and let her move on, let them move on with what they've been doing, and we look at the LDR and change it?
It could. It depends on how you change it. I think that's the kind of approach you'd be looking at.
Right.
You know, let me, I may be the only one. Has everyone seen the documents?
I have seen some of them. I
Okay,
probably haven't
because
seen
on
all
the
of them.
development order, it says that they are doing an accessory apartment and a pool house. Well, that's not what's there. So you make, we're sitting here as if the city bears, Ms. Castro, I know that you're biting at the bit. You have spoken.
Yeah, but
And
you're
so
saying
just a
these
second.
aren't accurate, and I should be able to respond to that.
Oh, I'm sure that you do think that. Just as I'm entitled to. But my point being that I get the feeling that we have sympathy because we absolutely contributed to that, but the documents aren't for there's just whether or not what she was able to build. I just don't have any. I have grave concern that we're trying to make it as if the city did something wrong that justifies what is being done, not only in her case, but as she says, in other cases. None of those are right. If there are others, they're wrong also.
Right.
It's
I'm not
just that we don't
blaming
know
them.
them.
Right.
I don't know about them. Maybe others do. I don't.
I'm not blaming the city completely. This
Okay,
is a
well,
two-way street. I'm sorry if I came across it. It's a two-way street. We don't know the conversation between the Castros and the people who gave them the building permit. It's a two-way street. So that's all I was saying.
Okay. All right. I didn't want, I just thought.
Oh, no, and it's not Mel's fault. It's not any specific person in the city, but
If I had to make any fault, it would be the building department for not deferring it back so it would come in front of the council so the decision would be made
It
here.
was signed by the city administrator.
Yes, sir, it certainly was, but just like our city attorney, we employ people that are knowledgeable, and I think that's what we do. Can't expect our city administrator or any city administrator to know all and know all.
Prohibited, number 3. I don't know how
Prohibited,
much
okay,
clearer
what,
you can
apartment?
get.
Okay,
Yeah.
what's an apartment? Show me the definition.
Well, that was the point I was making in that email. The list of allowed uses, it doesn't fit.
I know.
So
Oh,
you don't
okay.
have to even get to that.
Well, okay.
That's all
Come
I'm
on,
saying.
Ms. Castro.
We
You know
mentioned
where you are,
pool
Matt.
house, and that doesn't even say pool house.
I'm going
up
to
there.
give you, allow you twice to do this, but short, please.
Thank you. Apartment, the definition of an apartment is a dwelling unit. And if you look at the definition of a dwelling unit in the LDR, a dwelling unit has complete living conditions for a family. And it even goes into the details of cooking, bathing, all of that. And so both times we were told you can't have any cooking out here, you can't have kitchens, and we don't. Almost all of you, I think, have seen them, with the exception of the mayor. You've toured them. We don't even have a microwave out there. We don't allow that. We followed what we were told. But it's not an apartment. It doesn't meet the definition of an apartment. But if you're going to look at saying that you can't, in a tourist area, guest houses are not going to be allowed, then what's the benefit to the public for not allowing those? Because if you restrict someone from the use and enjoyment of their property, there should be a public benefit. What's the public benefit to not allowing people, if they have the land in a tourist area, of not adding a guest house if they want to? Why can't they? I don't understand what the benefit to the public is. And excuse me, but to the lady there, you can
don't
have
need to
rental.
address anyone but us.
You can have rental houses all around you. Tourists, I mean, you know, Rex, you've got them. But we also have people in Mexico Beach who are renting out individual rooms in their home. Does that count? Are you going to restrict those? You're going to take those away too? Because what is that? What is that? You said that it only needs full units.
Ms. Castro, you've made your, this is
I'm just
sort of
asking you
redundant.
questions. I'm asking you questions.
Thank you.
And the definitions and the
Thank you.
terms that were on those documents in the building department wasn't our writing. We didn't put those on there, and that came up at the special master hearing.
Okay, I'm sure. All right. No, this is out of hand. This is not a debate amongst, does the council want to, if we want to, I mean, I'm going to refer back to what our attorney said. Tonight is, even though it's been a long way around the circle, are we fine with what we have, or do we want to try to now find some kind of language that allows rental apartments, or it doesn't even have to be rental, living spaces, apartments, and residential area? Rex, I'm curious, what zoning category is your house in? What's your, where you live? Where are you?
27th, residential.
Your tourist?
Tourist residential.
Are you tourist residential or tourist general?
Tourist residential.
Residential.
Okay.
I just live.
Oh, no, but I'm saying that's been used multiple times. Let's try to make sure. All right, anyway, what do we want to do? Somebody give us some, or make a motion. Chair will entertain a motion for whatever we want to do, whatever y'all come up with. All right, is there a motion? All right, moving on. Then we're going to leave it like it is.
I've said my piece. Does anybody else have?
Well, I
any
just
guts?
asked for a motion, there was no motion. That's the only way I know to do it, so that we can not be sitting here again next month with that same agenda item and do this
You're right. It's-
process over. So if there's no motion, then what's on the books is on the books. So we'll move on.
So I'll bring it up next month.
All right, so I want to be clear, there's no motion, what's on the books is on the books. Is that good direction?
The result would be we're going to enforce the rules as we've interpreted them all.
Okay.
And
Right.
if anyone wants to change that, this is
Right.
the opportunity.
Obviously, nobody here wants to change it.
And we're going to enforce it for everyone,
Of course.
or just the Castros? We're going to enforce it for everyone?
All right, we're moving on. Next is Mr. Cheese, and I don't know who, is that you, or who represents that?
I'll get it started.
Okay.
Back in January of 2017, it's been so long ago already, we passed a food trailer ordinance. In so doing, we had a grandfather clause, whereas 2 current businesses were grandfathered to remain with their food trailer in the city. It does say in this particular section on this page of the ordinance in front of you up there, it says that permissible non-conforming status shall be lost upon a change of ownership of the food trailer or a relocation of the food trailer to a different parcel of the property. Mr. G's did leave last year at this time due to the fact that the owner of the property in which he was renting wanted the property back so he could build something on it, only to find out that the lot was small enough to where not much could be done. So now that that owner is willing to rent that piece of property again to Mr. G's wants to come back. So through no fault of their own, they were forced out. Now they wish to come back. So when they applied for the business license, or occupational license, should I say, we told them that we on the staff level could not redo the grandfathering clause, that would be something that the council would have to consider. And so that's where we are.
So the request is for return to the same location, same business, and due to the language of the food trailer thing, we have to reestablish the grandfathering. Is that a correct way to say that?
The legal thing that our attorney would have to help us with.
Well, I would say, my advice is there's not a strong basis for reestablishing that use. The grandfathering looks like it looks like it expired, but it's ultimately your decision.
Okay, so the word grandfathering is not really the right term.
Well, it really would, so they were grandfathered initially.
Yeah.
And then the trailer was moved off the property for a season, and they want to move it back. So what you're determining is whether that grandfathering still exists for them.
So it's basically like a new establishment moving in from the standpoint of the ordinance. It doesn't make any difference if they were here before.
The way it's written is, it's the fact that that particular trailer was moved away to a different location for some period of months. That's the way the grandfather clause is written. The grandfather doesn't.
Okay. It should.
All right, so if everybody's fully aware of what we're trying to do I have any comments before we?
I don't think I was here when it was written, but if we said we don't want food trailers, and I think we grandfathered in two at that time, if my memory serves me correct, and one moves away, and the grandfather went away from that food trailer, as long as it's kind of like the other one, as long as the ordinance stands. I'm sorry, but he made good food, I enjoyed it.
As much as I would like him back, I agree completely. We said no new food trailers. He's not grandfathered in. I don't see, it's almost, we have a ruling. I mean, we need to follow our rules. We can't be making exceptions all the time for everybody.
Kind of like the LDR, huh?
Oh, yeah.
No, it's nothing like the LDR.
It's similar.
Well, it is. I mean, it's a rule.
Just, you will, if you give it a chance.
You know, as much as I like to have them there, and I love the idea of food trailers in the city, we don't have any room for them, but it was voted that we wouldn't accept any new ones. So I think I need to follow that.
Well, I wasn't here, but I do have a question. If we were gonna allow him to stay, which, if I'm understanding that correctly, we were gonna allow him to stay.
He was gonna be grandfathered in with shoes.
We were okay with it.
Well, he was already here. What brought it up was when Shubis came in, everybody, I think, said, okay, we're fixing to have 5 trailers here, so, you know, they were already here, so we just limited to 2, and then if I remember, we even asked the question, now, if they move, it can't come back, and everybody agreed that, you know, that's what I remember, that it was because of Shubis that came up. I like the food too.
Come on, Shannon.
I won't be long, and I don't mean this to be disrespectful or anything, but in the beginning, I want to go back with Ms. Castro's whole point about her apartment in the backyard. I had all the licensing, everything was correct, everything followed through letter of the law, just like I was supposed to. I never had an issue until, I'm not going to say it was Ms. Castro, but that's the one's name that was on everything. She continually pushed.
We just need to talk about.
I got you, and whenever I came.
All we need is.
Okay,
we
I'm sorry.
don't need that kind of background.
But my thing was that I followed the law, never had any complaints whatsoever, passed 100% with all health inspections. So had that not come up in the first place, there never would have been an issue with my food trailer. I would have never even, the home or the business owner would have never even thought about building a place there. The reason that he thought about building a place was we thought we were going to get removed out of here. And so by talking to his sister said, well, we need the income, let's put an apartment building up. That's when we left at the end of our lease. That is the only reason that it ever even come up to begin with. We would still be actually stationary there. I also had the ability to buy the coffee shop before David bought it. And I was assured that I was legal, everything was fine when I went back and rebought my licenses again. So I gave up the only building that was for sale that I could have got. Now I have no opportunity to get a building in this city. Through no fault of my own was I forced to leave, should I say, because that is the only reason that we pulled out of there in the first place. Had this issue with us being allowed or not allowed, 8 months, yes, no, maybe, might get grandfathered, I doubt it, but yes, possibly, I don't know. That's what we heard constantly. So with that and the loss of income that the property owner was going to have, he sought other means to get property income coming in. So I guess my point is this. A few minutes ago, you were willing to change the LDR because Ms. Castro has an issue here. But because either I don't have the pool or whatever it is, and I don't mean this disrespectful, understand, I'm just looking at it from my point. You were willing to go to bat for Ms. Castro and change it in order for her to keep her business in her backyard. But I'm not allowed to have a business in a lot that has plenty of room, my own parking, my own entrance and exit, no blocking to any highway. There's never been a problem on mine, no complaints, nothing at all. So I don't understand why you're willing to go to bat for her, but then you said right then that laws are laws and they have to be followed. But
That's why we're not changing the LDR.
but you understand what I'm saying? I mean this in complete,
Yeah,
you know.
that's
We
fine.
got you. We
Okay.
understand your, we understand your
I have no
pleas.
problem with you directing it to me.
Okay. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Okay, you got it. All right, I'll just say, I wasn't here, I wasn't a participant in that, and I think food trailers have a place here. I never really understood, I wasn't part of any of that. But that doesn't mean, I do understand what it says, but in light of that we were gonna allow him to stay, I don't know about what Rex said about that if he left or anyone left, then you can't come back. But, I'm a food trailer person. I think they have character, I think they have charm, I think they offer the types of things that our community is. I heard many complaints about them having to leave than I did about whatever it was that was the driving force about thinking that food trailers didn't need to play a part or didn't have a place in our city. I never heard anyone say anything derogatory about a food trailer. But again, I wasn't sitting at this table, so I support food trailers. I support finding a way for this gentleman to put a business back there, had it for years, did a good job, never did anything that wasn't complimentary to the city.
And I'm amenable for
So,
anything that
thank you.
needs to be done.
That's just my say. I'm entitled to that, so that's how I feel about it. All right. So we have a request for Mr. G's to return. I think is the simplest way to say this. Is there a motion? Is there any other comments from the table?
Al, I think he was, correct me if wasn't he legal? It wasn't any questions
Yeah,
whether
he wasn't.
Mr. G's could
Yeah.
ever stay here. That was never a question.
Correct.
The question again came up when Shuby's came in, and that's when and that was, evidently a lot of people don't like food trailers, so they got concerned, so they didn't want any more coming in. So he was fine the whole time. He was legal.
Okay, I'm catching up on the rationale
Yeah, you weren't here.
for food trailers. I didn't attend all those meetings. I consider myself ear to the ground in our little community. I never heard, the only comments about food trailers I ever heard were positive. I never heard anything. I never saw any influx of people come to these meetings. I'm not saying it didn't happen. I never heard anything about it. My position is that if there's a way for him to return, I would support that.
I think the only way we could really do that, and I'm not at all against him coming in, is to rewrite this particular, non-conforming statement.
You have to change the ordinance.
Yeah, I think we can do it if we're gonna do it.
And I might mention the fact that I'm not really supporting any individual. I'm supporting my feelings about the other thing. And it's the same thing here.
And I think-
if we're going to allow him to come back, then we've got to change the ordinance. It's that simple.
And we did not vote to change the ordinance. We basically, it was kind of tabled, we kept the ordinance, so we did not change the ordinance for the other individual.
Is that a correct, are we on the right,
Yeah, I believe,
I just
to
need a
summarize
little-
what's happened, Mel felt he had to deny this. He's brought it to you as an appeal for you to make an ultimate decision on. You've heard the legal advice, and it's ultimately your choice.
So Mel denied it to begin with. Is that correct, Mel?
Because if y'all had the authority, because
Okay.
of the grandfather.
So if we want, and as I said before, I like the food trailers. I like your wordage, Al, because it does bring character. We're a beach community. So if we want him back here, then we just need to change the ordinance. So,
You know, we can change ordinances easier than we change the LDR.
Which is an ordinance.
This is part of the LDR.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. I was trying to be funny. It didn't work out too well.
well,
My
then
wife's
I'll
got this.
open the, I mean, I would support changing that number 3. If that's, I guess that's number 3 of an ordinance, that's not the ordinance. I guess, I don't really know. What is that ordinance number?
That would be 660.
Okay.
Yep.
I would support doing that, because I think food trailers have a place here.
And what you're saying is we would allow food trailers now if they came in, did the correct.
Well, I haven't read all the order, I don't know
Okay.
the criteria, I don't know what, I remember what we had for years. And again, I want to be, I'm up front. I don't know what the council heard that were so anti-food trailers. So I really, I'm behind the curve on that, but I can only speak for my years of being here and listening and knowing what I was told when that came up, that I heard of many more complaints about it, not having them or not allowing them. And I'm assuming that there's some criteria on where they can go. That's what it used to be. You had to have a commercially zoned lot. You had to meet all the requirements. It was nothing the length of that, I can tell you. I can tell you now, it certainly wasn't the length of that. And that you had to have permission from the owner of the property, and you had to be, meet the requirements for whatever, if it was a health department, or it didn't matter what it was. You had to meet all the criteria for the state regulations if they were involved, so forth, so on.
I just remember there was enough rumbling to do this. I mean,
Well, again, okay, I don't know. I don't know where that came from.
Yeah.
I was asked several times, why is the city doing that? And I couldn't, I don't know.
My recollection too was the council asked the planning board to take the lead role on developing recommendations. They probably looked at this closer than the council did, and the council then approved the ordinance that they largely had suggested.
Well, I would recommend if we do this, that because we're a tiny city, I don't want a food trailer, I like food trailers, I like eating, but I wouldn't want one on every corner, so somehow or another, if we could, in a realistic way, some kind of limitation, that says something, so we don't have everyone that comes in and applies is automatically approved regardless. If we have some way of limiting it, I think we should do that.
so if we look at this and decide to change it, it's going to take us months. Let's face it, we don't work too fast. Isn't there some way that we can just add a sentence indicating that they were grandfathered in? If they leave for a season, their grandfather can be reissued after one season missing?
No, you just will change the ordinance, period.
I'm just trying to look at a short way of changing it, because changing ordinances take,
I have 10 grandchildren, and when they were here, that was one of their favorite spots. The food is delicious. But as a group, this is when Al was not here, we voted to stop food trailers coming into the city. because we had no control over it at that time. We had two. And,
Well, now, excuse me, but there was always control. You couldn't just move one in, you had to have the owner's permission, you had to have a commercially zoned
well, I
lot.
know that, but all that could happen without us having to vote, without us saying every time. Yeah, they could do it, just like, yeah, I agree with you.
I agree with
I
that.
agree. But
Yes,
then, I don't know, maybe Rex and I were talking to the same people, but the people that I talked to were very concerned about seeing one on every corner, or whatever. I would love it if he could find a building and serve that food.
I did have a building though, but I gave it up because.
I'm sorry for that.
That's
sorry.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with food truck. I mean, I don't.
You want one on every corner?
well,
When there's only a few corners that.
just a minute, just a second, please. You've been to the podium, but we gotta have some sense of, you can't barter back and forth here. Yes, help us, just,
Mr. City Manager, how long has this trailer been off the property?
The ordinance was approved in January of 2017. The next month is when they left. So before the next season started, they left.
So February, March.
Somewhere in that
So we're
timeframe.
coming up on a year. So if you're inclined to make a simple change to this ordinance, you could change this to say that if it's been off the property for a year, and if you adopted that quickly, everything would fit. Nobody got special treatment.
yeah,
Oh, okay.
That's fine.
we sure don't want any special treatment.
That is a possibility.
Well,
It's a
that-
very minor
And
change.
that could be like that. It wouldn't take.
Well, is everybody for that?
Yeah, I'm for that,
Yeah.
and if we want
Good.
more, then we
That-
need to look at
Do
rechanging.
it, let's do it.
All right.
Can we do it? Nail it.
We,
Thank you.
I'll bring an ordinance.
All right.
Next
So
meeting.
You
so
got
we'll
it.
vote on it next time.
It'll
Adrian
take
has
two
a
readings,
problem.
but yes.
No, I just have a question. Do we need to make a motion to change the LDR, or are we just instructing you to do it?
Oh,
Well, we
No,
can't-
we're not-
we're not changing the LDR.
But this is part of the LDR.
But we're
It's
not
not
changing.
changed yet.
No,
That's why we need to do it quickly. Bring an ordinance, it'll be about.
because
one page
we're gonna
ordinance.
do it within the year thing, and he's gonna make some minor adjustments to that, and then
If
we're
you
gonna
can
follow
make
his,
minor.
we're gonna follow his lead. You'll have it for what, the
We're gonna
ninth?
add about 5 words, and we're gonna have to adopt an ordinance to do it.
And will we have it for a first reading at our 2-week meeting? Whatever that, I can't even think,
23rd?
the 23rd meeting?
I'll add it for you.
I thought we didn't read ordinances at the fourth meeting.
Excuse me?
Don't we not read ordinances at our second meeting?
Why would we do that?
Why can't we?
Where have you heard that from?
Why couldn't we?
We
The
have.
attorney says we can do it.
I'm curious, why, I'm serious, now that's,
Because once I put an ordinance on there, and I was told we can't read ordinances a second time at a fourth meeting, and now it's okay. That's why I'm asking.
Well, we're changing the LDR too.
Wait a
That's
minute.
the common practice, but I don't think we have a strict rule on that.
Okay.
But I do think we have to
We've had a
follow.
practice.
it's a
our
regular
practice.
meeting.
Yeah, I did a regular meeting. The next meeting is a regular meeting.
I know, but I'm confused.
I
I'm
am
confused
too.
about what the clerk's asking, I don't.
I think it's been a
Let's schedule
practice.
it for the fourth meeting.
Well, it's because we haven't really had a regular meeting.
I'm just saying, I think-
All right. Announcements. Motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Thank you. I hope you haven't changed this menu.
Who knows?
No, shut you.